Welcome to Indianapolis. As a Texans fan, being in this building is my own personal hell. But even I have respect for the demons that live here. There's been a lot of them to roll through this city over the years. Manning, Marvin, Edge, Reggie, Freeney, and Mathis. There's almost too many to count. And yet, none of those Hall of Famers inspired quite the same level of fear that he did. If you grew up watching football in the 2000s, by the way, you already know who I'm talking about. I don't even have to use his real name. Partly because he had more nicknames per capita than anybody else in NFL history, and they're all awesome. The Eraser, the SS Iowa, or my personal favorite, the Sandman. He was the embodiment of reckless abandon. A true psychopath that would full sprint every single play until he either met the ball carrier or God. There were very few players like him back then, and obviously even fewer since. Bob Sanders was a one of one, a player so dominant that without his presence down here, none of the guys up there win a ring. That by itself is a franchise-defining legacy. And yet when it comes to Bob, that legacy is only half the story.
You know, Bob Sanders, this man right here will smash you.
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream. Make him the cutest that I've ever seen.
Man, was he stopped. That's what you get from Bob Sanders. I mean, he comes crashing down from a safety position. He brings it. Whew.
Down the sideline, picked off. Intercepted by Bob Sanders.
Don't have nobody to call my own. Please turn on your magic beam. Mr. Sandman, bring us. Please, 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 Mr. Sandman, bring us our dream.
Let's back up a little bit before we get to Bob and talk about the reason why he was so important. Like, how was it that his presence alone was the catalyst for winning a Super Bowl? Because it kind of sounds outrageous that any safety could be that crucial to success, but he was. And there was a very, very specific reason why. December 10th, 2006. A day that will live in infamy.
It'll be in the mid-60s today here in northern Florida. Really a perfect day for football. It's Fred Taylor going the other way. A block by Wilford. A block by Reggie Williams. Jones drew again. Good block by Brady. That opens up the hole. And there goes Maurice Jones-Drew.
And they get pushed around. They're getting their noses bloodied right now by this offensive line, and they can't hold on.
Jones-Drew slips through the grasp of Cato June. He's on the run. He is gone. Another touchdown. The electrifying Maurice Jones-Drew out of UCLA. Adding on to the total, 377 yards. How about that?
To truly understand the value of Bob Sanders, you need to see what happened to the Colts defense when they didn't have him. It was brutal, it was embarrassing, and it started on the Jags' very first play.
Fred Taylor got a great block from Wilford, breaks a tackle, and he's on the fly. Jason David is in pursuit. There goes Fred Taylor. Oh, and he's down at the 17-yard line. A gallop of 76 yards.
Let's break down this run on tape, because you're going to see a theme developing very quickly here. The Jaguars start out in a formation known by a lot of coaches as solo, and then they use a motion that, at least in the West Coast world, is called Z-insert. Z-insert means the Z receiver motions in to set himself up as an insert blocker, and in this case, that Z receiver is 6'4", 235-pound Ernest Wilford. That's basically modern-day tight end size, so he's there for one reason and one reason only, and that's to block. Now, the actual play call here is literally just 18 handoff. It's a wide zone to the right, and we've broken that down 1,000 times on this show before, but if you're new here, the offensive line is flowing right and trying to either cut off one of these defenders to open up a seam to the front side, or if they lose and the defender crosses their face, they just keep pushing them to the front side and wall them off so the running back can cut it back behind them. Now, at the same time, that aforementioned running back is reading those blocks from the outside in. His eyes just go gap to gap to gap, and the first time he sees a crease develop, he puts his foot in the ground and he hits it. That's why you often see running backs in these types of systems referred to as one-cut guys or slashing backs, because on zone runs, you really only need to make one cut to hit the hole. Another key note here, by the way, experienced backs in wide zone usually will know before the ball is even snapped where they're going to have to cut back, especially against a Tony Dungy defense like this one that tends to shoot gaps rather than hold them. So just based on alignment, the back here, Fred Taylor, already knows that he's not going to get to the front side edge because there's a corner out there waiting for him. He also knows that the front side defensive end and front side defensive tackle are going to be shooting the C and B gaps respectively. And even if the center gets out of there quickly and climbs up to take out this linebacker, the cock nose on the backside is almost assuredly going to be shooting into the A gap right behind him to take away that as well. So no matter what, Taylor is anticipating an early cutback, and he's likely going to have to be aiming to hit all the way to the backside behind Ernest Wilford, who's responsible for cutting off the last backside defenders. After the snap, and right as Taylor is getting the ball, you can see him already bending himself upfield to prepare for that cutback. And literally not one step after securing the handoff, he drops his hips, puts his foot in the ground, and turns his eyes right to Wilford. 7 Colts defenders are all getting aggressively washed down to the right. The insert blocker is cutting off not 1, but 2 Colts on the backside, and the only Colt on the screen who can come down and fill that cutback lane is, well, not Bob Sanders. It's actually rookie Antoine Bethea, by the way, who became a great Colt in his own right eventually, but as a young kid going against Fred Taylor, he learned a very valuable lesson that day on why good pursuit angles are important. Bethea completely whiffed on the tackle as the only support player on the field who could do anything about this run, and that was it. 76 yards later, Taylor was finally brought down, but the damage was done. Then one play after that, a fellow rookie by the name of Maurice Jones-Drew came into the game, and after yet another key block by Wilford and yet another miss by Bethea, MJD waltzed into the end zone for the score. 2 plays, 94 yards, and the route was already on. The Colts had 31 missed tackles combined in just their 2 games against Jacksonville that year, 13 by the safeties alone. I could play clips like this one for 5 straight minutes and not run out. It was really that bad, like just truly horrifically awful. Bad angles, bad technique, bad effort, bad everything. It was like without Sanders on the field, the heart and soul was completely sucked out of this defense. They just had no will to fight at all. And this one game wasn't the only aberration. All told, Indy missed 87 tackles as a team in 2006, per Pro Football Focus. That was the most in the NFL by far that season. The second place team was all the way down at 64. And even when they did make the tackle, their average depth of tackle, meaning how far past the line of scrimmage they got someone on the ground, that was a positively grotesque 5.3 yards past the line of scrimmage. The second worst team in the league was 4.8. Nobody else was even close to them. In terms of plays per drive on defense, meaning how many plays the offense on average was running against them per possession, their average was 6.3, which was the highest count in the league. They virtually never forced 3 and outs, and they just couldn't get off the field. With the playoffs just weeks away, this did not look like a championship defense. In total, Indy dropped 4 of their last 7 games after starting the year 9-0. They were in a complete tailspin heading into January. The Colts needed their attitude back. They needed their physicality back. They needed their leader back. And they needed him right now. Fortunately, for all those wearing the shoe, timing was on their side. Just days before the start of the playoffs, at the Colts' absolute peak of desperation, the Sandman returned.
Everybody in the universe knew that the Chiefs were going to try to pound Larry Johnson. Well, during the game, the Indianapolis defense held him to 32 yards on 13 carries. Unheard of.
I thought the corners, the secondary tackled exceptionally out there today. They just look like a different football team. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers have caught a ball today.
Alright, now comes the part of the program where we finally get to talk about Bob and what made him special. Sure, he was a 205-pound DB that also ran in the mid-4.3s in the early 2000s, which, by the way, was not common at the time. He had great hips, great feet, was ultra-competitive in coverage. All of that was great. But the real value of Bob Sanders was not what he brought to the table on third down. It was what he did on first down. That was the secret sauce. Throughout the regular season, the Colts defense allowed 5.5 yards per play just on first down, which obviously is bad, and that was 27th in the league. But that also means that on average, teams still had 2 plays to get just 4.5 more yards to move the chains again. Nobody was ever really behind the sticks against this team, which then had a downstream effect of neutralizing the only other strength that the Colts defense had, which was their Hall of Fame pass rush duo of Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis. Those two could never really pin their ears back and just rush because opposing offenses were almost never in third and long situations. And the data backs that up. In the regular season, the Colts averaged the fewest third down pass rush snaps per game at only 9 because their early down defense was just that bad. And even when they actually were in real third down pass rush situations, their average yards to go was only 6.4, which was the third shortest average to go in the entire league. And generally, that's extremely manageable for an opposing offense to deal with. And to make matters even worse, because their coverage on the back end was equally terrible without Bob, their average yards allowed on third down was also insanely high at 10.2. And get this, their third down conversion rate allowed was 52.7%. That is staggeringly bad, and was by far the worst in the NFL that season. In order to get better on defense, this team first needed 2 things above all else. Better run defense on first down, and on third down, they just needed one more DB that wouldn't get immediately toasted. That's all it would take to be competent as a unit, believe it or not. And luckily for them, those 2 things are precisely what the return of Bob Sanders provided.
Well, that's what the Ravens do defensively. They give you confusing looks at the beginning. You're not sure what you're looking at.
Intercepted at the 45-yard line.
The human ball magnet, Ed Reed.
The 2006 Ravens defense was a legendary unit full of Hall of Fame talents. Ray, Ed, Haloti, Suggs, the list goes on and on. They did everything they could to limit that deadly Peyton Manning-led offense and held them down to just 161 net passing yards for the day. They even forced 2 turnovers and only allowed 15 total points. It was a masterful defensive performance. And yet, the Colts defense was even better. They also held the Ravens to 161 net passing yards, but on top of that, forced 4 turnovers themselves and were dominant on third down, only allowing Baltimore to convert 2 times on 11 attempts. And a big reason for that was, once again, average third down distance. On those 11 attempts, the average distance to go was 7.6 yards, which was more than a yard extra of breathing room than they had in the regular season, and that is substantial, even if it doesn't sound like it. That would have been the longest to-go average in the entire NFL during the regular season. And as a result of that extra room, Indy finally created a favorable environment for their edge rushers to tee off. So, tee off they did. I want to walk you through a sequence here that represents exactly how much of this game, and honestly how much of this whole postseason, played out for the Colts defense. This is a 1st and 10 with just under 9 minutes to go in the game, and Indy was desperately holding on to a 12-6 lead. By no means was this game wrapped up at all yet. The Ravens were trying to get literally anything going on the ground to keep themselves on schedule, so they dialed up a similar run concept to the one that gave the Colts so much trouble earlier in the year in the Jacksonville game. This is I left 18 weak. I left being the formation, 18 weak being the run concept. It's basically just a 2-back outside zone run where the fullback is lead blocking to the weak side to create another gap on the fly. And remember, that's the main value of what a fullback brings to the table. You can create new gaps with a fullback anywhere at any time. There's 7 defenders in the box and 7 blockers, so if we're using the same principle as before where every single defender has a gap that they're responsible for, the fact that the fullback can go in any direction and create another gap anywhere along that surface means that it's really easy to make the defense one man short. Unless, of course, you have a short man. As the ball is snapped, Sanders has his eyes trained on the fullback from 10 yards deep past the line of scrimmage, because generally speaking, the fullback is going to lead you to the ball. And from there, Bob is playing off of his will linebacker here to fit this run. If the will crosses the fullback's face for some reason and takes on his outside half to close that new gap, Bob would then fall back inside and wait for the ball carrier there. Or if the will takes on the inside half of the block to spill the ball outside while also creating a pileup with the rest of the offensive line behind him, like he actually does here, Bob will have to come correct and fill that lane outside himself. The important part of this play is not that Bob made the tackle at all. I mean, it's very possible that other Colts defenders might have gotten Jamal Lewis on the ground anyway after a few awkward arm tackles, but that's not really the key here. What's important is that when Bob hit Lewis in the hole, he did not go forward. Sanders was a human tree stump when he hit you with a form tackle. He would squat so low and have such unbelievable power and leverage in his tackles that even a 245-pound monster of a back like Jamal Lewis would get 0 yards after contact when meeting him face to face. I mean, you can even see it in the wide angle here. When Sanders hits Lewis, he stopped moving. That 2-yard gain didn't become 5. It stayed at 2 yards. And that was the secret value of Bob Sanders. 1st and 10 became 2nd and 8. An unblocked pressure on play action and the resulting throwaway on that 2nd and 8 then became 3rd and 8. And all of a sudden you look up and you're behind the sticks in the 4th quarter, down by a touchdown against Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis. Game, set, match. All because the Colts had a safety that could finally actually tackle. Indy went on to win that game 15-6, and the tone was set. Their defensive performance against Kansas City was not a fluke, and this unit was for real. But they still had one more test to go before they could reach the Super Bowl. The enemy of all enemies.
There is Adam Vinatieri, one of the captains for the Colts. He was out there for the coin flip, shaking hands with his former teammates. Ellis Hobbs awaiting the kick. Vinatieri, the all-time leading Patriot scorer, overtook Gino Cappelletti in his career at New England, and he gets this one started with a boot down to the 6.
The 2006 AFC Championship is famous for the Colts having one of the worst first-half meltdowns in championship round history. Basically everything that could have possibly gone wrong went wrong. Even goal line fumbles by the Patriots still somehow ended up as touchdowns. Next thing you know, New England had a 21-3 lead, and the Colts were shell-shocked. But there was one play in particular that stands out to me because not only did it matter a lot early in the game, but it mattered even more late in the game.
4th down play. Colts showing blitz from the gun. Here they come. Brady gets time, and it's Troy Brown taken off. Brown down at the 7-yard line, making yet another clutch catch in his long and remarkable career. 27 yards.
This was a 4th and 6 from the Colts' 24-yard line. The Patriots were well within Stephen Gostkowski's range here for a field goal attempt if they wanted it, but Tom Brady wanted to go for the jugular instead because he knew he had them on the ropes already. The Colts were presenting a man coverage look here, but Brady wanted to make sure there was not a blitz attached to that coverage, so he used a dummy count to try to get the Colts to show him what they were in. Now, New England was on the road, so they were in their silent count, meaning center Dan Koppen was looking at Brady's feet between his legs. That's generally how a silent count operates. And when Brady lifted his foot, that was the start of the count. So everyone knew exactly what the timing was for Koppen to then lift his head back up and snap the ball. Obviously, the Colts have functioning eyes themselves, so they know what that count is too. They can just look at Brady's feet and Koppen's head and generally know when the snap is coming, so they were timing their blitz with those two indicators. Hence why that dummy count is so great for sniffing out a blitz like this. You're using those two indicators against them. The Colts showed their cards here, Brady and Koppen saw it, and you can see everyone for New England getting back on the same page for how to sort out that blitz with the protection call. Indy's mistake, or rather their biggest mistake, was not getting out of that blitz after they saw Brady and Koppen ID it, and they paid dearly for that mistake. The Colts still brought 6 on this blitz, including Bob Sanders, and that left nobody in the middle of the field as a zone helper to protect their DBs against the one thing that Troy Brown did better than any other Pats receiver at the time: running choice routes. Brown had so much room to work, and he knew it, so all he had to do was just work inside to get a leverage advantage on this DB who's all alone in space with no help, and then he could just break inside on the slant to wide open grass. Up front, the Patriots' offensive line effortlessly picked up the blitz because they all saw it coming the whole way, so Brady had a squeaky clean pocket to deliver this ball. Brown got 27 yards on that 4th down, and one play later, Corey Dillon punched it in for yet another score. On the very first play of the Colts' ensuing drive, Asante Samuel Sr. grabbed his famous pick 6, and the route was on. At that point, the odds of Indy winning this game were extremely low. But of course, low does not mean 0. The Colts eventually managed to stabilize towards the end of the second quarter. They mounted an agonizingly long 15-play, 88-yard field goal drive to close out the first half, making it 21-6. And then after halftime, the Colts received and doubled that up with another 14-play touchdown drive that sucked up the entire first half of the third quarter all by itself. Suddenly, Indy was only down 21-13. That's a one-possession game, and their defense was off the field for such a long period of time that they were allowed to regroup and fight back. And boy, fight back they did. On the ensuing Patriots drive, the Colts immediately forced another punt after an outstanding effort on a 3rd and 2, and then just 3 minutes of game time later, Peyton had mounted yet another scoring drive, plus the 2-point conversion to tie it up at 21. Despite everything that had gone wrong, we now had a brand new ball game. Brady answered that touchdown with a scoring drive of his own, and then not to be outdone, so did Peyton. Gostkowski got a field goal, then Vinatieri, then Gostkowski, and back and forth we went. 2 heavyweight fighters in their prime just throwing absolute haymakers at each other over and over again. The only way either team was going to win this game was to get one stop on defense. Just the one. That's all it would take. Luckily for the Colts, they had just the man for the job.
He's got time and almost picked off by Sanders.
Let's break this play down piece by piece because a lot of what you see here is going to look very familiar. Just like earlier in the game, Brady runs through a dummy cadence, lifting his foot to simulate that silent count. And again, just like earlier in the game, the Colts showed their pressure look. Brady and Copen responded by sliding the protection left again to block that up. But unlike last time, now Gary Brackett knew that Brady had them in a bind, and you can see him immediately start scrambling to get them out of that call and into something safer. In this instance, the new call was cover 1 lurk, or some call it cover 1 cross, behind a 4-man rush. The advantage of getting into this coverage, particularly against the Patriots of all teams, is it lets Bob Sanders lurk in the intermediate middle of the field to be a zone helper to every other defender that's in man coverage across the board. It puts their best DB in position to just play fast and free and read Brady's eyes to take him to the ball, and that is exactly what happens. We see the same motion and the same choice route from Troy Brown that got the big gain on that earlier 4th down, except this time he has nowhere to go. The corner is waiting with outside leverage to break on any route outside, and Sanders is sitting over the middle waiting for that slant. So Brown's only option here on the choice route is to just try to sit down in between them and hope that Brady can fit it into the window. Sanders was already closing on the route before Brady even started his throwing motion, and because he's Bob Sanders, he easily covered enough ground to step in front of Troy Brown and break this pass up. His only mistake on the play, if you can even call it that, is dropping what should have been a pick 6, but I suppose I can forgive him for that because he at least got the PBU to begin with. Forcing the Patriots to punt in that situation prevented them from effectively just running out the clock and icing the game. And once Peyton got the ball back, that one last chance was all he needed. The Colts marched down the field and scored the go-ahead touchdown, and after one more desperate pick from Brady in the closing seconds of the game, that was it. Indianapolis was finally going to the Super Bowl. And oh, by the way, as if it even needed to be said, Bob still wasn't quite done yet. Throughout the playoffs, and even through the Super Bowl with Sanders on the field, the Colts lowered their average yards per play allowed on first down from 5.5 down to 4.6, which, again, I know doesn't sound like a lot, but that is a massive difference. It's the equivalent of going from 27th to 7th overall in that metric basically overnight. More success on first down meant they had more breathing room on second down, which generally meant they could keep teams out of short yardage on third down. Being in third and long instead of third and medium, or even just third and medium instead of third and short, meant more obvious passing opportunities, which in reality just meant more real pass rushing opportunities for Freeney and Mathis. In the playoffs, the Colts defensive line had a 58.3% pass rush win rate on third down, best out of all playoff teams, and they racked up 23 total pressures as a unit, also the most out of all playoff teams. Their total yards allowed per game was just 238, which was also the best in the playoffs. They gave up just 82.8 rushing yards per game on the ground and only 16.3 points per game. This defense, which had been so out of control, so undisciplined, and so outright soft without Bob on the field, suddenly blossomed into a buzzsaw when it mattered most. Nobody, and I mean nobody, wanted to play against this unit by the end of January. And that transformation was all made possible because of one man, the Eraser, the SS Iowa, the Sandman. All of those names fit, of course, but honestly, you can just call him Bob.